From the ABC 27 Digital Now Center, this is Beyond the Forecast with your most accurate local meteorologists.
Well, welcome to Beyond the Forecast, everybody. I'm meteorologist Brett Thakara.
Another tag team event. This is Dan Tomaso, and, you know, I keep getting this phrase thrown at me, Brett, and I don't know if this has happened to you yet, but people keep saying, well, this is your Super Bowl. And I guess in some ways it is, but, you know, I've also, not to date myself too much, but this is year 17 for me, and my career started off with the 2009-2010 winter, where we had back-to-back storms. You and I worked both storms together. They were on weekends. And then after that, we had several other larger snowfall events. And then we had 2016, and then everything went bye-bye in terms of big snow. So, yes, it's a Super Bowl in some sense, but this is kind of hearkening back to what we used to work on.
Well, and honestly, every winter storm is both fun and challenging and difficult. And, you know, whether you're getting 1 to 3 inches like we did last weekend, or even some places got more than that, you're trying to nail it down. Last weekend's forecast may have actually been tougher because the models didn't really see that snow coming until about 24 hours before.
And we were on the outside looking in
event.
For the most part.
Exactly. Where this one's been well forecast, at least the generalities of it, for about a week. So we've known that this was coming, but there are nuances.
Almost makes you a little itchy.
Well,
because it's been so obvious. I said this to someone today that it's not often that we see a bigger snowstorm like this that kind of hits you in the face.
Well, and you know, again, John Neese, our professor and former Weather Channel star, he works at Penn State. He's on Weather World. He just did a segment. I sent it to you and Eric about a snow drought in Pennsylvania since 2016. Yeah. And if you go by the numbers, we have not had a lot of snow. Now, Fink broke down the numbers in the last 10 years. We've had, I think, one storm that had over a foot.
2018.
And then one storm that got close in 2020, but that got ruined at the end with sleet. Hint, hint. That could happen here, too.
That happens a lot here.
But this is going to be a bigger storm, and it is fun to talk about. But let's start with today, because there's a couple of things we need to break down here. There's East Pennsboro. It's a nice day.
It is. Like yesterday.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. 47.
Gorgeous yesterday.
It exceeded our forecast by a few degrees with that high. And now all of a sudden we're going to go back into the Arctic, literally tonight. So that wind today is going to bring in this Arctic air tonight. And it's already in western Pennsylvania. As you often say, though, the cold air is a little bit slow to get here. It really started, I noticed, to affect Erie and Pittsburgh this morning. It's really not going to move into our area until tonight. Now, temperatures are going to start to drop. And that really is going to help set the stage for this heavy snow event on Sunday. So let's talk about the day. Here's Millersburg.
Look at that.
They had a little snowpack. It's gone. Yesterday
did it in. Yep.
Yesterday did it in, but it's nice. It is going to be a little bit on the breezy side here. But Dan, why don't you explain? Here's what I mean about this cold air, though, being a little slow here. But look at it. You can see it's coming.
The mountains are not big. We know that here in Pennsylvania, but they are big enough that if you kind of picture The Blob, right? Anyone ever seen that movie? It's an old school movie.
Yeah.
You just kind of see everything just kind of oozing in. Cold air actually behaves in a very similar way. Think about it as a fluid. Think about it as a very heavy, dense fluid moving in. And it takes a while for it to hit the mountain chain just to our west and then bleed into the valleys. And oftentimes we get some sunshine to outpace it.
Yeah.
And that's why the valleys are in the low 30s.
Right.
But the higher elevation locations of Pennsylvania have already dropped. I mean, we're seeing teens and 20s, and this was happening yesterday, too.
Yeah, and you know, honestly, this exceeded. You know, I went 30 today thinking, you know, a lot of places were in the low 20s. A lot of the model guidance said, ooh, I don't know if we can get to freezing. Well, we're already above that. Look at Philly, 40 degrees. Yep. So, but listen, the cold air is coming. Once the sun goes down, we're going to start to see it. And by the way, we already are cooler, right? I mean, we said 47 yesterday. Our region is about 10 degrees colder than yesterday. The West is about 10 to 15 degrees colder than yesterday. And so, again, as we look at this Arctic air is really the sort of the first ingredient.
Yep, setting the stage.
Setting the stage for this. So right now, though, satellite and radar pictures should show you pretty quiet conditions except for the winds. These winds, look at Dubois, picking up.
It's impressive.
I mean, 20-mile-an-hour winds in Lancaster, and the wind chills are starting already. So, again, we see sort of the leading edge of that colder air up near Erie and Bradford, where that sort of you can see the front with this line of snow. I mean, once that comes in, I think the sky's the limit for the bottoming out of this.
You're referring to this little area up here. There's some snow and cloud cover. That's the next boundary to work through. That's the Arctic air.
Yep, and it's going to blow in here.
The bully in the room. That's what, speaking of John Neese, always would talk about. Cold air is the bully in the room. It's heavy, it's dense, it forces its way in. And, people often make the mistake that warm air rises. It's actually the cold air forces the warm air up.
But is it going to win the fight this weekend? That's what we're going to talk about.
That's what we call a tease.
Blustery today. Again, 30 degrees, and I say that, listen, it's going to fall eventually to around 30, and then it's going to keep tumbling. Look at this tonight. Wow. And here's the other issue. We have clear skies over it. It's going to clear out.
Yeah, and calm down.
So I just think 5 degrees, maybe that's too high. Because let me tell you something. Look at this map. Dan, explain this, because this is not wind chill.
No. This is the Arctic discharge coming in from, say, the Northwest Territories of Canada. So when you get truly cold air, it's coming normally from northwestern Canada, west of Hudson Bay. And so this is the forward progression of that front. And it is going to be historically cold in places like Milwaukee, even through Bismarck, Montana. We won't tap into those types of numbers, but it's going to be cold next week.
And it may be historically cold here. I mean, depending on how much snow we get, it's possible we have below zero readings in the morning.
Think about a freezer, and you're building up all this ice and snow, and essentially, as temperatures are dropping at night, then you get a little extra kick in of cold. You have that insulation with the snow in place.
Look out.
Yeah,
because this is what it was like in the 90s. We would get these big snowstorms, and then the cold would settle in for a week or two after, and the snow wouldn't go anywhere.
It becomes hard as a rock.
That hasn't happened in a while. So here we can see the drop coming in tonight. Now, these are the air temperatures, and again, we're going to go all the way down into the single digits. And then, by the way, because we're going to be so cold in the morning, watch the afternoon. Temperatures don't climb above the teens. And boy, that's good snowmaking temperature, isn't it?
It certainly is. Now, you and I have talked about this internally. You actually see a change in shape of the snowflakes when it's that cold. You end up with more needles in some cases. So you may wake up Sunday morning and the snow may look a little bit strange at times.
Yeah, because typically when it snows around here, it's like 28 to 31 degrees.
You get some of those bigger, fatter flakes.
This is going to be a very cold snow, and the winds pick up. Now, again, I'm going to argue this too. The winds don't go totally calm overnight. They stay at about 10 miles an hour. Watch what that does. And the National Weather Service has highlighted this too. I wanted to take a moment and just say, look at the wind chills early Saturday. This overdoes it maybe a little bit. I think 10 below. It could be feeling like 10 below tomorrow morning.
At least briefly. And again, wind chill can be very spurious because it follows the wind. It's not like you stay at minus 10 all day.
But the point of it is, I can't remember. It's been a while since we've seen that. So again, that's just to highlight the point. This air mass is pretty unique. It means business. So let's take you out here because we're going to take you out through the start of the storm. Again, if you have evening plans tonight, you're going to be just fine. Although, again, keep in mind it's going to be cold. All day tomorrow looks good. But again, cold. Talk to us, Dan, about when this starts and this dry air at the onset that may be an issue.
Yeah, so it's very cold, very dry air. So it may take a few hours into early Sunday morning after midnight, whether it's 4 or 5 a.m. at your house, that it may be a while until you see consistent snow falling because it's evaporating in that very cold, dry air. And again, you may see initially very strange-looking snowflakes because it's so cold and it actually changes the shape of the dendrites themselves.
I'm kind of excited about this part of it because, again, it's been so long since we've seen a really good cold Arctic snow. Now, I'm going to argue here this next period that you just showed between about 5 a.m., 6 a.m. through noon. Notice how it's all snow and it's just cranking. We think 1 to 2 inches per hour. This is when we have to make the most hay. So what did I just say? Let's say 6 a.m. to noon. That's 6 hours. If it's really pumping at an inch an hour, there's 6 inches. If it's pumping at 2 inches an hour and all of a sudden because it's so fluffy, right, it's the ratios are high, you could get 6 to 8 inches in that short amount of time, couldn't you?
It could fluff up pretty quickly.
Yes.
Now, where there may not be as much fluff is farther to the south because that warm nose sneaks in just around lunchtime. And even if you don't see sleet, it will change the way the snow looks. It may become more of that sticky, heavier, wetter snow, and that changes the rates.
So play this forward here because you're going to see that sleet line. There it is.
Ooh,
okay, it's going to creep in.
The sleet monster.
Sunday afternoon and Sunday evening. So let me just explain two things, and then I want Dan to explain to you. One is it's going to sleet. It's going to sleet. Okay.
We didn't foresee it as well in 2020, mind you, in December 2020, and I was out at 6 p.m. And I was on the West Shore. Actually into some higher elevation. And all of a sudden, I heard it on the windshield. And we were doing live shots, and I heard it on the windshield. I'm like, uh-oh.
And there goes the storm. And that was a storm, too, I think, I forget exactly what we forecasted.
I think
but
we did 12 to 18.
yeah, and guess what happened? 11.2.
Right.
So forecasting a foot is hard, but there's so it's gonna sleet, and then there's just no stopping that warm air. That's not to say that, again, given the cold here and the fluff, that people can't get a really good snow like a foot. But that sleet is something we have to watch. Dan, I had a question from a viewer on Facebook, and I wrote them back and explained this to them, but people are confused when we say, oh, it's going to be so cold. Temperatures are going to be in the teens. And then when we talk about a warm nose and how is it going to sleet if it's in the teens? This is going to be all snow. Explain how that works, because people can't visualize that.
It is hard to visualize, but going back to my idea of the blob, you have this very, very cold, dense air that's in place. And what happens is maybe the first 500 to 1,000 feet of the atmosphere is very cold. Once you get above about 1,500 feet to even 3,000 feet above in the atmosphere, then mild air can stream in without being impeded by any friction from mountains or trees or other buildings and obstacles in. So it's kind of free flowing. And so basically you have a separation of liquid. Think about your salad dressing at home. You get the very dense stuff that sits at the bottom. You get the lighter stuff that sits at the top, and you really have to shake it to get good salad dressing out of it. Well, the atmosphere works the same way. The heavy, dense stuff is at the bottom. Think of that as the cold, and then the mild air layers over top of it.
Yeah.
And even if it's just a couple of hours of that mild air coming in, all you have to do at 3,000 feet is get above freezing, and all of a sudden, your snowflakes melt. They refreeze as it gets closer to the ground. That's how you end up with sleet.
Yeah, and that's without anything to impede the warm air, even when it is very cold. I mean, it's I'm just going to say it again. It's going to sleet. Now, when that exactly starts and how much snow we have on the ground until that point, these are questions we can't answer today, but we do know it's going to happen. So let's move on and talk about...
At least the guidance is showing it more and more. It's in line with our thinking.
It is. So Precision Cast says it exits by around midnight. And again,
if not a little earlier.
I think it's going to be a little earlier than that. But here's what you can expect during those pre-dawn hours. I would say between 3 and 6. That's when the atmosphere will moisten
It'll
up.
Be primed. Yep.
Overcome that dry air, probably some light accumulations through dawn. But Dan, that morning period is really the worst of it, isn't it?
Yeah, and I've already gotten questions about church services and other things going on Sunday morning. I highly advise whatever options you have at your disposal, if it's streaming, if it's moving the service to Monday or something of that effect. I know it's not convenient, but this is going to be the worst time to even think about traveling. Our staff is going to be out in it trying to get here or trying to get to their live locations. And even we're concerned about our staff getting around. So that should show you something.
Yes, exactly, because that's just the worst part of the storm. Now, the snow lightens up a bit in the afternoon, but if you're in a good snow band, you could still see an inch per hour into the afternoon. But I think what's going to happen is as we move past noontime, here comes that sleet.
Yep.
And once that starts mixing, it just kind of shuts off the good accumulation. Now, you could still get an inch or two of sleet on top of the snow. And because it's so cold at the surface, the sleet and snow may mix together, and it just becomes, a mess into the fluffy snow. So what does that mean in terms of totals? Well, explain how we came up with the map, because hold on a second, here's Precision Cast, and this is pretty much now in line with our 8 to 14 thinking.
There's not a big gradient across our area.
Nope.
Everybody's almost at equal opportunity here, except maybe areas south of the turnpike that could see the most amount of mixing.
Yeah, but I mean, again, Precision Cast this morning was at about 12 to 14. That's fine. That's within our range, but now it's kind of a little more realistic to me.
We're going to see a lot of wobbling.
And again, does Harrisburg hit a foot there? Not exactly. So this is how we came up with the map. As you said, there's not a lot of contouring here. Our region should see a fairly uniform snow. If you get a little more sleet, going to wind up closer to 8. If you get a little more snow and less mix, you're going to wind up closer to a foot or maybe beyond. Now, I want to show you a model here that does pretty well with the mixing.
We're going to bring in our third meteorologist, Mr. David Shiner.
Let's pull up the NAM model, because this was a model that did well in that 2020 storm.
It did. It was the most correct.
Everybody kind of blew it out. Watch what happens here. We're going through Saturday here, and there's the cold air. Okay, so the time
it's coming in,
there's the high. Now, by the time we get into Saturday night, this shows the dry air nicely, and there comes the storm. It has to overcome the dry air, and it's going to fight its way in here, but the rates are going to be low. Now, stop right there. This is Sunday morning, 7, 8 a.m. Snowing pretty good. Look at those dark blues, Dan, right?
Yeah, looks good.
Notice where the mixing line is. It's well to the south. Keep going now. We're going to have this come in here. Several good hours of that snow, but here's 2 p.m., 3 p.m. That mixing line came in a little bit before that. I mean, the NAM is showing it. Look at that purple.
Well, and what we know from experience is you kind of have to draw that purple line a little farther to the north and a little farther to the west.
Exactly, and just a little quicker even than model. Now, you will notice our northwestern areas, look at that banding of snow, and this is the hardest part to forecast. Dan, explain that banding and what it could mean for some of those spots.
So in a very narrow corridor, maybe it's 5 to 10 miles. I mean, it's very narrow. You can snow to beat the band. That is thump snow. That is your transition area between where the cold air is still trying to sit and where the warm air is invading, and that temperature difference drives snowfall rates. And we often call it puking snow. You end up with very large snowflakes. You end up with very heavy, wet snowflakes and almost zero visibility.
Yep.
You will know it if you see it.
And just go back to that image one more time, because again, see that where that thin blue, dark blue band is just to the north of the mixing line.
Yep. You're highlighted pretty
right,
well there, Mr.
Right,
Trainer.
yeah, right there.
It's like you've listened to us for years.
Now, the question, though, is does it set up where it suggests over the Ridge and Valley region, or is it maybe a couple miles south over Harrisburg, or is it over northwestern Lancaster? I mean, that's the point. Now, again, that looks pretty realistic given what we know about these storms in terms of that warm surge. But listen, I don't think we're going to have to adjust our map up.
No, I mean, at this point, if we were to go up, it would probably be 10 to 16 inches. And I would need to be overwhelmed to see that. I mean,
I don't see that
the
happening.
data's been pretty consistent.
Yeah, especially with the NAM and others. We don't just look at the NAM, but we look at something called the SHREFs, the Short Range Ensemble Forecast. They're all sitting right around 10 to 12. Well, that's right in the middle of our range, right? So, if anything, I would say...
Don't get cute when it comes to forecasting.
No, and I would say, if anything, if the data keeps coming in sleet tomorrow, maybe we have to lower it 6 to 12. Right now, I like our forecast.
Me too.
So let's move on and wrap it up for you here, because I think what you're going to see is, here's the issue we talked about.
This is the big deal.
Look at that. Do you remember this in the recent past? I don't.
No, I think the one I remember was how cold it was in between the two storms in 2009 and 2010 because nothing melted. Mm-hmm. So I remember going on the roof of my parents' house when I was home from college working here and literally pushing snow off the roof to try to clear things out for the second storm. Yeah,
because it was back to back. It's going to stay cold. This snow isn't going anywhere. The kids can sled for weeks because, even if we get just 8 inches.
My daughter's already asking. She wants to be out in it.
8 inches of snow is plenty, and it's not going to melt, and who knows if we get some more on top of that. So we've got Arctic air barreling in tomorrow, only 17 degrees. Temperatures might stay in the teens on Sunday. I'm going to go around 20. The models went a little bit warmer. But still, I mean, that is good cold air to make this snowstorm. Eventually, the upper-level warm air wins. And then look at next Tuesday. I want to point that out. Eric said this yesterday, but that -2, first of all, I want to point this out. All of those temperatures next week are akin to change and be a lot colder.
Well, and especially localized.
Localized. We need to see who gets the most snow and where that falls. But that -2 on Tuesday morning would be a record.
Yeah, it's impressive. And by the way, not far away are the Wednesday morning and the Thursday morning records. So no matter how you look at it, it's going to be cold. Find that extra blanket at home.
Yep. And it's funny, a lot of the records leading into this, I noticed, and a lot of records next week, per Eric's research, 1935, 1936, about 90-year-old records, perhaps a similar weather pattern then. It looks like it's echoing that now.
Yep. And this may be the heart of our winter right now.
It certainly is. And so the next question is, are there any more storms in the future? Right now, we don't see any in the extended. The biggest story is going to be the cold. We will continue to watch this for you. Dan's going to be with you throughout the rest of the afternoon. Eric tonight will be in tomorrow and Sunday tracking the storm. And at this point, it's about sort of, if we have to lower that map because of the sleet, we will. I also think a lot of it, Dan, is just going to be forecasting as the storm develops.
Yeah, and again, the storm is not here yet. The storm's going to affect the central United States first. We're going to see pictures and reports from that. Places that normally don't get a lot of snow are going to get a lot of snow out.
And ice.
Yep.
And ice. So we'll be watching it. That's a breakdown. I hope you've appreciated it. We've appreciated hosting, and thank you for joining us here on ABC 27 News Plus. You can always find us on abc27news.com, and we'll be tracking this throughout the weekend.
Have a good one, and stay with us. And thanks to David Shiner for directing for us. Appreciate it.